Welcome to This Is True Really News. I'm Scott. We're doing a best of This Is True Really News today. For your listening and viewing pleasure, apropos of episode 667 from July 10th of 2023. You're going to love this because it's the cow dung to green energy scheme, the Flathead Beacon police blotter, an Uber shooter, an adult story. Oh boy, this is going to be fun and a half, or else. Coming up today on This Is True Really News.
Yeah.
Rensselaer.
Attaboy. Always pick a nice, pithy
Polytechnic Institute shows up.
The Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute?
Yeah, in Troy, New York. It's all about that.
There's another one?
Yeah, well, there might be one.
Vlad, is there one? Is there another one, or do we just have the one Rensselaer?
Well, I think if it's going to be in Troy, it's going to be sort of,
Trojan?
Over there. Near Turkey. What?
Just go on.
Oh, okay. Please like, subscribe, and follow This Is True Really News. And if you find a story you think we would enjoy, send it over to TITR@netradio.network.
See, we're different than the song. We have a long way to go, and we take the long way to get there.
This is True Really News with Scott Combs and Tony Vercanis. All the news you're about to hear is true.
Really?
As far as you know.
Here you go. For all of you across the world and in my neighborhood.
Across the nation, around the world, and up your street.
Let me just check, make sure none of my neighbors actually listen. Okay, we're good. Because really, there'd be pitchforks. Where was I? Oh,
your pitchforks. 7
iconic things about the Wild West that most folks are dead sure of.
Okay.
That weren't. Number 7, everybody wore a Stetson, right? Every cowboy has his hat.
Absolutely.
True. He does. But John B. Stetson didn't start producing those hats until 1865.
Oh, so he was a latecomer.
It was Hollywood that decided to give them one because, well, they were there.
Of course. And we could make it special.
If you go back to earlier, the most popular type of hat was, Vladdy, you're going to love this. It was the bowler.
Bowler. Yep.
Which Laurel and Hardy both wore.
Yep. So did John Bonham from Led Zeppelin.
And there were a few reasons they did. They were affordable. They stayed on your head, even while you were riding. Mm-hmm. They looked a bit fancier if you needed to, dress up.
Yeah.
Then cowboys and others in the West wore all kinds of hats, though. Wild Bill Hickok. When you see the hat he wears, that with the hat he wears is with that large brim is technically a sombrero.
Oh.
See, this is what I learned from watching educational television.
Well, didn't one of them wear his baseball hat backwards? I think he was the first.
Not in the Wild West, no.
He was the Western.
Shut up.
Rapper.
Even
Icebox.
Tombstone. Even Stetson's original Boss of the Plains hat, which I think you can still find.
Yes, you can.
But it doesn't look like the modern cowboy hat. It looks more like an Amish kind of hat.
Oh, that's interesting.
All right, number 6. Okay. Settlers and Native Americans were a constant war.
No.
Correct.
They often cooperated.
There was violence twixt settlers and the natives, but it was nowhere near as prevalent as the Western movies would have you believe.
Right.
Oregon Trail, for example, between 1840 and 1860, 20-year span there.
Yep.
Native Americans killed 362 settlers. Settlers killed 462 Native Americans. I call that a push.
Yeah.
Which is a rather crass way to say it now that I think of it.
The people are actually dead. Nice job.
At the same time, if you're wondering, disease, things like dysentery, always a fun one.
Yep.
Killed up to 30,000 people on the Oregon Trail during that same 20-year period.
Yep. Disease was far worse.
The conflict didn't really explode until U.S. control over the frontier solidified, and that's when you started to get the Indian Wars.
And everybody coming out of Fort Riley to quell them.
Yeah. Number 5. Bandits rob banks all the time. Which leads you to wonder why you would ever. Well, even on the Wild Wild West TV show.
Yeah.
Remember the opening? What's the first thing that happens? Guy comes out after robbing a bank.
Yeah, but what about
West karate chops him?
But what about the giddy up stagecoaches?
Hang on. Between 1859 and 1900, 8 recorded bank robberies or heists across 15 U.S. states. In 2011, there were more than 5,000 bank robberies.
Well, we've got more people and more banks.
And fewer stagecoaches.
Yeah.
The banks at the time were often right next to the sheriff's office.
Which,
they only had one way in, which was the front door.
oh, boy.
Oh, yeah, and they were generally right in the middle of town.
Yeah.
These are places that just didn't... if the younger brothers had known that, the James boys and the Youngers wouldn't have had that ugly thing in Northfield.
Location, location, location.
Why do we think that robberies happened all the time? Because the few that succeeded became really famous cases and hit the pulps, right?
And that's probably why they became famous or were written about, because they were unusual.
Trains and stagecoaches, I would think, much easier targets.
I would think.
Number 4, myths that aren't. Tumbleweeds belong in the Wild West.
Yes.
As the two gunmen approach each other, it's high noon.
Dum, dum, dum.
Which, by the way, was something Bill Hickok did. Although he said it wasn't noon, it was about 3:30. But
so, I'll meet you at noon, but I'll be late.
And the reason they did the high noon thing was so there were no shadows and no glare for either of them. That's why they would do the high noon. As the two gunmen approach each other at high noon, a lone tumbleweed blows by. That much is true. There were tumbleweeds, but there shouldn't have been. The tumbleweed didn't originate in the American West. It's an invasive species of Russian thistle. The Russians were after us even then.
The bleeping thistle makers.
Didn't make it into the U.S. until well after the Civil War in the 1870s. It did love the West, though. Once it got here, it grew out of control. The Department of Agriculture actually declared it an official problem in 1880. So one of the most iconic features of the Wild West is one that really shouldn't have been there in the first place. Number 3 myth, the cowboys originated the Wild West, yay or nay?
Well, everybody.
No, actually, the Wild West killed off the cowboy.
Oh.
The cowboy tradition originates with South American vaqueros.
Oh.
You can tell them.
Caballeros?
No.
Means cowboys.
It says South American vaqueros.
All right, fine.
Ole. These guys have been at it since 1598 when the first vaqueros were hired. They were the ones who herded absolutely huge herds of cows in what is now the U.S. Southwest and West. Yet once the U.S. took over, barbed wire fences became the rage.
Keeping them out.
Large as they still were, the cows could no longer freely wander about, which, I mean, it's a cow. Maybe that's why they're so ticked these days.
Yeah, right.
Which fairly quickly killed off the vaquero and the cowboy for the most part. There are still cowboys today, yes, but it's more ironic that the cowboy is the star of the Wild West when the Wild West was the big reason for their actual decline. The second myth, the Wild West was actually wild. Not so much. Modern U.S. cities have higher murder rates than even the most notorious frontier hellhole.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And while crime happened, it was more of an exception rather than the rule. See the bank robbery thing earlier.
Yeah.
Largely because life in the West was really rough. And when day-to-day life is tough, you don't need no good bandits there to make things tougher. When official law enforcement failed, settlers quickly banded together locally to protect the public order. Do something wrong, and suddenly all your neighbors, all the folks that know you, are pissed. Good way to stay civil. Very good reason. By the way, you can't really tell like gunfighters from lawmen because sometimes they flop
the same thing
sides. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And number 1, there were 6-shooters everywhere.
No, I don't think so.
No. People had guns. There was a rifle, a shotgun. Shotguns were very favorite. Actually, for those that think the Winchester won the West, it may have. The Colt 45, the Army, Navy, whichever pistol
Navy
that was.
Revolver, yeah.
Those were a big deal, but mostly shotguns.
Oh, that makes a ton of sense.
Absolutely.
You don't even have to be able to aim very well.
Just be close. Near or far. Near, eyesight's not so good. There was a rifle or shot. You got to watch Big Jake for that one.
Okay.
There was a rifle or a shotgun in most every household. Many also had revolvers, although they were the last resort kind of gun.
Right.
Because they were
less accurate for one.
Oh. They didn't go traipsing all around the place carrying them either. Most places had really strict no-gun policies. Residents had to keep their guns at home. By the way, the holsters you see, the formed leather holsters you see, those weren't there either. If you see the holsters that they carried sidearms in the military, those flop covered.
Yep.
Those were the holsters they had for the most part.
Oh, interesting.
It made for more interesting and much longer gunfights when they were out there at high noon.
Rensselaer Polytechnic.
Rensselaer Polytechnique.
Institute.
Oh my God.
You okay there?
Having one of the young ladies from Princeton plays at the something Polytechnic Institute.
Ah.
But it's not Rensselaer. I don't think they have a hockey team.
Anyway, these guys say they
Does MIT have a and what would they be? Go protractors.
Go Mitts. They'd contracted with
Go math.
Diegel Cleaning Systems, Inc.
Okay.
To clean the Cogswell building lab. Why are they feeding me all of this crap?
The Cogswell Cogs. This is where they started. I'm beginning to think that Jetsons was a documentary.
So anyway, these guys had been cleaning it for more than 20 years.
Of course they have.
When back in September 2020, something went devastatingly awry. Can I get pumpernickel instead? Thank you. Thank you.
You could. You're all weak. Tip your waitress. Just don't knock them over.
In a freezer containing research samples that must be kept at minus.
I can't remember my children's names, but stupid bits from 50 years ago, those I can remember.
Exactly. It must be our stupid brains. So I'm
going with that for now.
These research samples had to be kept at 80 degrees below 0 Celsius. Minus 80 degrees Celsius.
International Falls in January.
Yeah, really cold. An alarm was set to go off if the temperature fluctuated by 2 degrees Celsius.
Huh?
After the alarm malfunctioned, the school put safety precautions in place, including a sign on the freezer. And I have a karate student who is a researcher.
Yeah.
And this is how it goes. A sign on the freezer explaining that it was beeping as it is under repair, along with instructions for how to mute the sound if needed. But on the night of the accident...
As opposed to just muting the sound.
Yeah. The custodian reported hearing the annoying alarm going off and afraid the breakers might be off. He tried to turn them on. Instead, the lawsuit says he turned the breakers off. Following day, research
He couldn't tell the difference? Even I know. If we have if lights go out, right, and you check the fuse box, if it was wiggly, down, up.
Yeah. It's simple.
Up. Always up for on.
The following day, research staff found the temperature in the freezer to be catastrophically high as a result. All their samples had become sentient beings, and now they had to deal with them and give them
There's a movie in that somewhere. The Rock could probably star in it because his movies have sucked lately, so...
The research had to do with solar energy conversion in photosynthesis systems, capturing and converting it to usable energy. It was worth more than $1 million. Can you guess why they're being sued?
Money. Okay, we should probably not quit our day jobs. Do we have day jobs? Yes, I work 6 days a week.
You see?
This took me a while to sort out. I had a story about a bill in Florida that was not a guy bill, a legislative bill, because I know how your weird little mind works, because mine does too.
William?
The Senate bill was created to protect animals. It was and I'm sorry for this, I'm just going to read it the way it was written. It was the bark of the town after it was filed in February. A Democrat from Broward County, Lauren Book, the Florida minority leader, filed Senate Bill 932 to protect cats and dogs and other aminals, test subjects, from harm. But the bill also contained, because, legislators just can't resist adding stuff.
Attaching things to it.
The bill also contained a provision about dogs and car travel that include a ban on letting pooches stick their heads out of the window while on rides. So apparently, Senator Book, who says she's a dog lover and has a couple of them, doesn't let her dogs have fun. Because every dog I've had, it's been one of those great things to watch the tongue flapping and the jowls jowling as his head's out the window at 60. And he's going, go faster, go faster. Where was I?
And ears are.
Exactly. Although that wasn't near as much fun with Shadow. He would just pin his ears back so he didn't blow in the wind. He was a smart puppy. He wanted to actually jump out the window. So
that would be that.
After getting some feedback from the public, though, okay, now this is like first week in February, right? By the second week, she got a little feedback from the public. The book said she plans to amend the bill during the March legislative session, taking out the ban while preserving the rest of that safety measure. Okay. The bill would still make it illegal for cats to be declawed outside of medical necessity. Yes, your sweaters don't matter. Remember when you used to own pets?
I remember when I used to own jammies.
That's more than I wanted to know.
Cashmere jammies had raffled.
It will also prohibit animal testing for cosmetics and other products meant for human use. And as was reported earlier, the bill would make it so product manufacturers can't use their test products on the live, non-human vertebrate animals.
Okay.
Wait, the amoeba.
So use a congressperson. They've got no vertebrae.
The amoeba rights people will be on this in a heartbeat. So as the bill was introduced, violators could have faced a $5,000 initial penalty as well as an additional $1,000 penalties for each day of continued violation. Hang on. Pursuit of enforcement and penalties would be carried out by the Attorney General, no less, a state attorney, or municipal attorneys where the violation occurred, according to the bill text. Now, I realized this was in February.
Yeah.
And as I looked at it, so I went snooping this morning.
Yep.
And I found this cute little headline when you searched for Senate Bill, whatever it was, 932.
Yep.
It had a list of things introduced, removed, amended.
Oh, okay.
May 5th, 2023, Senate died in regulated industries.
There we go.
Florida is, if nothing else, still a tad on the normal side. Just a tad, a skosh.
Karma. 2 quick stories of karma.
Was that nurse that replaced Axel in the treehouse?
Nurse Carmen.
Carmen, the nurse. That's
Dude.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, and she used to drive around in a cute little silver Ghia. They called it the
was Carmen Ghia.
Yeah. No, sorry.
You're an evil being.
An elderly fella, 46, used to buy newspapers. One day he paid for one, but took 2 papers because he was sick of his coworkers rifling through his paper. Don't you?
So he stole a newspaper.
Stole a newspaper.
And I hate when coworkers rifle through my paper, especially while I'm reading it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it used to happen to me all the time. As he walked off,
I was looking at you.
As he walked off with both newspapers, his shirt tail got stuck in the newspaper box when the door slammed shut. He had to stick another quarter in it to get his shirt out.
So he didn't steal a paper?
No. Turns out God took care of him. So this guy, his brother and a friend, decided to be funny. They get on an elevator ahead of another friend so they could get to the hotel room first and lock their other friend out just for kicks and giggles.
Sure.
Turns out they got stuck in the elevator for an hour and a half.
Been there. That's not fun.
While the other friend got to chill by the pool.
Oh boy. Could I have another?
Could you peel me a grape while I'm waiting for my idiots?
Listen, if my friends ever show up, give me a warning so I can leave. I want to lock them out of the room.
This is true, really news. Send email to TITR@netradio.network.